Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and today I give you my suggestions for the games to grab during the Steam Summer Sale of 2023. There's a couple of rules for making this list. First, it has to be a historically low price for the game, or very close to it, in order to be on the list because I need some criteria to narrow down this list, and that's using info from SteamDB. 2, I couldn't have covered it in the last Steam Summer Sale videos that I did last year, which still have good deals, and you can check them out in the description below. Without further ado, let's get into the deals, shall we? Let's start off with Curse of the Dead Gods, 65% off for $6.99. Curse of the Dead Gods gets the basics of action roguelike gameplay right, rewarding precision dodging, movement, and blocking, along with having a reasonable weapon variety to keep your attention. There's good, not great, enemy variety early on, but the big key here is the gimmick that flavors this roguelike gameplay. The fire and light element plays a part in keeping you safe and, well, avoiding damage, but the corruption is the meat of the game, having to manage how much corruption you take and risking it for getting more upgrades, as one curse could end up killing your whole weapon synergy and strategy, forcing you to adapt. It's a bit difficult at times, and it's definitely got that one more run mentality without being truly addictive to the point of being a negative for some. It's a game that I wanted to get back to, and well, this video was a good excuse to do that. Second on the list, it's Rogue Lords, 65% off for $8.74. This is one of those games that you have to dedicate yourself to in order to really get the best out of it. It's a card roguelike with a lot of unique character gameplay designs and a lot to learn, and even after 5 to 10 hours, it can still confuse you with some of the interactions and how the game works. This is one of those games, however, that I describe as a home run hitter. For a good amount of people, its difficulty and brutal nature early on will turn them off, as they feel like the game over-explains certain things, or doesn't explain things clearly enough. But if you stand there and learn, you'll realize the game has a massive depth to it with the synergy of characters and their abilities, and really rewards thinking outside the box as opposed to just sitting with one strategy. I mean, just look at that playtime. Granted, I don't know why I never did a full review on it. Maybe I should fix that. Just another one to add to the list. Hopping along to the next title, it's Rabi-Ribi, 70% off for $5.39. Look, people see the bunny girl art on the Steam page and assume that it isn't a great Metroidvania for some reason. Yes, it's cute and all, but don't let it overshadow the wonderful combination of bullet hell and Metroidvania here. It may start off a little slow, but when you start getting skills and weapons, the combat starts to really pick up, and the bullet hell mechanics really start to shine. Boss fights are the prime example of this. They force you to change up your movement patterns and adapt. Controls are exactly where they need to be given the great level and enemy design. Granted, newer players are still welcome here with the difficulty settings, and the story is still touching despite it being goofy in all the ways you'd expect with seeing some of the stills you'd run across in the Steam store page. A lot of my limited complaints are nitpicks in the end, so this game is a must-have in any Metroidvania fans collection. And the dev has a new game with Metroidvania elements coming out soon. We'll probably have coverage on that too, considering how much I love this one. Moving right along, it's BPM Bullets Per Minute, 75% off for $4.99. Coming before games like Metal Hellsinger, BPM's unique take on FPS gameplay may just seem like an FPS stacked with a rhythm gimmick on the surface, but there's lots of layers of detail underneath. Each gun and how you face enemies changes based on your reloads, your abilities, so much so that you have to unlearn some of the basics of 90s FPSs to really take advantage of all the game has to bring you. It's a hard learning curve. You will die several times in the early going, sometimes to what seems like complete bullshit. But over time, you will get better and better, if you have the frustration tolerance high enough to deal with the early goings. It will reward you for that time spent, and although it's not the most visually stunning game, I think it'd be better with a different color palette, it's fun, and that's what's really mattering in the end. Especially for $5. Next up on the list, it's Gordian Quest, 40% off for $11.99. Gordian Quest is filled with content that would make any sort of tabletop traditional RPG fan water at the mouth, but does enough to stand out from its competitors. To say you have a lot of choices and mechanics may be one of the biggest understatements of the century here, but what I truly appreciate is the delicate balance that the developers were able to achieve with the gameplay. The fact is, when you usually add these mechanics, classes, and options, the harder it is to get something that isn't exploitable, but Gordian Quest somehow was able to do it. I love all the different classes and how you can shape them in a lot of ways, and the addition of the SP points on top of AP adds another layer of intrigue that kept me wanting to think through every battle and option. Weapons and armors felt great to get a new set of ones around every corner, and really, I don't want to be doing this little snippet here, I would rather be playing the game. That should say something. Next up on the list, it's Grapple Dog, 60% off for $5.99. This one hurts to see on this list, actually. It's only been over a year since it's released, and it still hasn't gotten over 350 reviews, for a game that was number 3 on my overlooked games of 2022. A platformer with a grapple hook, Grapple Dog's use of momentum and level design makes getting through a level challenging without being overly frustrating, allowing for some fun, goofy moments of chaos while still giving you the consistency with the hook to get through things on a regular basis. The game's pacing in levels knows when to push speed and when to rein it back, and there's really no low point to the game. It's all solid to great platforming that reminds me of old platformers while still being its own thing. It's cute, it's got some great music, even if it gets a little bit too repetitive, and frankly, if you're any sort of platforming fan, there's no excuse not to get this game right now. Rolling in next, it's Shadow Warrior 2, 90% off for $2.99. Like $3. $3 for great weapon combat that has a great flow, an interesting element with the different components that you can grab, but the core combat is chaos, and I love it. Moving from gun to gun feels like an alternate version of Doom, and Wang's attitude is absurd in all the right kinds of ways that you would expect of the series. It's a game with that attitude that oozes from the demons you kill to the next demon you kill, and frankly, there's a reason why I didn't put Shadow Warrior 3 on the list. It just doesn't have that sheer energy and oomph like Shadow Warrior 2 has. So if you like action, if you like kinetic shooting, and you like a little bit of sass, Shadow Warrior 2 is a must-buy at $3. Moving right along, it's Muse Dash, 85% off for 44 cents. I'm tempted to just say here, it's literally 50 cents, just buy it. But I want to be clear that even at the game's full price, hell, even over its price, Muse Dash would be worth it in the rhythm genre, bringing a fun twist to the rhythm game formula with the whole jumping over things and ducking. It hits a great musical variety from J-pop to trance, without many songs being copies of each other or similar and having the same challenge. There's a good uniqueness between characters without being overpowered in a lot of cases, but here it's all about the satisfaction of hitting those notes and beat, or hell, avoiding them. I've seen people do 0-score runs as a challenge, and it's got that kind of depth that will keep you coming back to try songs again and again. Seriously, if rhythm games even slightly interest you, or you want to try them, Muse Dash is perfect to get you into the genre. And frankly, you'd start off with one of the best in the past 5 years. Next on the list, it's One Step from Eden, 60% off for $7.99. I want to just read the start of one review to really put this game into perspective. From CO Dozen, I think it is? I started the game by not understanding a thing and being bad. Now I understand some things and am still bad. It is really fun though. And that really hits to the core of the game in my mind. It's difficult, can be hard to understand at times, but you're still having fun while doing it. It's Mega Man Battle Network gameplay in a roguelike run nature, and there's a ton of skills and character variety to keep you coming back. It takes a while to understand what you're doing, but once you do, you're really appreciating the different skill synergies and how each character plays a bit differently. I find it really succeeds in being the smart type of action game, where just wildly hitting buttons will get your ass handed to you. Is it for everyone? No, but it is for me, and I just need more time to play it. And all the other games on this list. Throwing a wild curveball on this list, it's The Evil Within 2, 80% off for $7.99. Why is it a curveball? Well, this is an indie games channel and pretty much not AAA games. And while The Evil Within was maybe a step below some of the biggest titles, it is still published by Bethesda. And I'm going to be honest from the get-go here. I targeted this game for this list strictly because I wanted to play it more than a few hours than I did originally. I liked The Evil Within 1, and I found it weird that the second would go for a more open-based mission execution. The fact is, I don't like open-world games as much as other people. But I'm realizing that this actually works for The Evil Within 2 for not knowing what to do or feeling the pressure of where exactly to go and the tension that it creates. The combat is decent while having some good progression of the story and a little bit of customization to really get your playstyle down with. I'm not a stealth player, but I do appreciate what it adds to the horror here, and I do really feel the resource management come into play as I get further and further. Hell, you know what? I'll stream it in the week that this video comes out, just to give you guys some more incentive to take a look at the game, and to give me a reason to play the game more. Now for something a little different, let's go with Hypnospace Outlaw, 70% off for $5.99. Before you say anything, I know it's on Game Pass, but honestly, it's worth owning outright, and was the inspiration for the Slayers X game I just covered in this review here. Think of yourself in this game as an internet moderator, diving into this weird world of the early 90s internet with all the character that you'd expect from a Nickelodeon cartoon in its heyday. This is for those who love lore and diving deep into a world, as the game rewards paying attention and discovering its little clues, and being smart with how you look at things. But honestly, it's just such a unique and different experience compared to everything else out there that it's worth just trying at this low price to see if it hits with you. Moving right along, it's CrossCode, 70% off for $5.99. Look, it's almost a meme at this point on how much I've wanted to go back to this game. It's hard to keep up the grind of YouTube and focusing on spotlighting the smaller games that haven't gotten attention while still playing through every single game that I end up buying. Luckily for CrossCode, it was able to break through and get seen by the general gaming public, and that's for a good reason. It's fantastically designed from top to bottom. From the MMORPG-like story that is engaging and well written, to the puzzles that have plenty of moments of frustration, followed by an "oh," and making you feel like a smarty pants. Then there's the combat and exploration that stand as one of the best in the indie action RPG genre, testing your skill against a variety of enemies and bosses. Like, I could keep going on, but I'm just going to put on screen the number of positive reviews versus the negative ones. Like really, just like the acclaimed, everybody loves CrossCode, and you will too. And yes, that was another wrestling reference, I'm sorry. A game that should be flying off the shelves, it's Jet Lancer, 60% off for $5.99. What's funny about Jet Lancer is that its aerial combat and movement controls can be so satisfying and fun to mess with that you may legitimately forget about the objectives during a level and end up failing a mission. You know when that happens that you've got a fantastic core game, and that's what you're here for. Fun dogfighting in a 2D plane, and it's something that's addictive. Get sad when you get through the game and realize, oh, there's not more to it. Not that it's short, it's just that you want more. The controls and use of a mouse in particular is very superb for the levels and enemies that you have to face, and the soundtrack is something that the world needs a lot more of. It's honestly a game I'm surprised more people didn't pick up. It's flashy in all the right ways, but at least you can reap the rewards for it being cheap right now. And hopefully, we'll see more from the dev in the future. Next up, it's Yuppie Psycho, 60% off for $6.79. If you want a unique horror experience, Yuppie Psycho is the game that you need to grab. Playing as Brian Pasternak on his first day in a new job that he probably isn't qualified for, he finds himself in a dangerous world of corporations, horrors, and an atmosphere that I really haven't seen replicated in, well, I can't think of a game like it. The story creates characters that you attach to and have complexity to them, and each of the different floors of the building creates a unique feeling of dread and wonder. There's a little bit of puzzling, a little bit of action, and a whole lot of tension that makes me really excited to see what the developer makes next, because this was fantastic. And if you haven't played Yuppie Psycho yet, now's the time, because you won't find much more creative in the horror space than it. Running into the next slot, it's Ghostrunner, 70% off for $8.99. Ever feel like you wanted a cross between Mirror's Edge and a Ninja Gaiden game? I don't think this game is truly it, but I guess Ghostrunner would be something like it. But I'm gonna warn you from the get-go. Those who aren't willing to die a bunch and start over and over again need to run far away from this game. The melee combat puts you in the body of a robot assassin that can die to one significant hit, and your job is to figure out how to get from one enemy to another, dodging and jumping around like a politician being challenged on a campaign promise. The story is decent and the presentation is stellar, but it's all about that satisfying control and gameplay, and it takes me back to the days of the NES in being perfect in execution. It is getting a sequel in the near future, so it's the perfect time to grab the original right now. Rolling right along, it's Zombie Rollers Pinball Heroes, 80% off for $2.99. Oh great, another game I put a lot of hours into and never made a review on. I disappoint myself on a regular basis. Zombie Rollers is a combat pinball game with skills and roguelike elements, and I find that it really works as a change of pace game, where you need something familiar, but a tiny bit different. Despite what some of the other reviews say, having the skill to hit the pinball in the right place, to trigger a trap, or to hit back an enemy is some of the best precision gameplay from pinball that I've seen in the genre, and there's enough map variety and different characters that'll lead to that infamous one more run mentality. And sure, it's a mobile port, but it is upscaled and well presented here, and frankly is the kind of game that you can put on after a long day and just relax and enjoy with, and maybe watch a YouTube video or two, like some of these ones. We need more of these types of games in our lives, and for $3, you could do a lot worse. Winding down the list, let's go with Timespinner, 70% off for $5.99. If you're looking for a shorter Metroidvania in the vein of Symphony of the Night, Timespinner is probably your game. The time portal mechanic is well woven into the world and the gameplay, and the story can have some on-the-nose writing, but I found the narrative to be interesting and had some fun characters, despite some people saying the story is trash. The orbs that serve as your main weapon do well in providing several different options for elemental attacks, and can be fun to play out loadout-wise. and there's a good amount of enemy variety, with it having over 80 or so enemies and bosses. There's good side quests that don't linger too long, yet make you want to complete them. And while it's probably more on the easy side, this can really be a great infection vector to the genre, bringing something to get people interested in more complicated and deeper Metroidvanias. But hey, this is still worth playing on its own merits. Being the Brawling Brute's favorite game, yes, that's a WWE reference, it's Fight Night, 60% off for $7.99. This is one of those sales where I feel a lot more confident recommending this game. See, Fight Night is one of those games that could be really hit or miss, and specifically at a certain point in the game. Sure, the punching combat and parrying is a bunch of fun, and there's good enemy variety. The bosses are challenging, and there's some interesting secondary abilities and skills. It's just that the game sometimes can be confusing in where to go or what exactly needs to be done, and frustration will build when you have to do a whole level again after you finally just ran out of health on a level from all the random encounters. At $19.99, it was going to be a game that I was on the fence on recommending to a majority of people in how hit and miss it was going to be after the first several hours. But for $8, yeah, that's definitely worth your time and money. Next up, it's Sakuna of Rice and Ruin, 40% off for $17.99. This is the other game I put on this list because I really wanted to play more of it. It's somewhere between Harvest Moon and an indie Castlevania game, and to be honest, that's entirely my jam. The farming mechanics have surprising depth to it, with combat and Metroidvania exploration feeding the actually in-depth farming element to get more nutrients and resources to produce better harvests. Time management is extremely tight but rewarding, and this is a game that I could see a younger version of me, who didn't try to cover all the games in the world, spending hours and hours and hundreds of hours because of how effective the combat and weapons are, and the strategies involved in planning how far to go and what resources to get for the harvest. Another game that I'll stream sometime this week or over the next week to give you more of an impression of what the game has to offer, and that's over on Twitch. Next on the docket, it's Lost Ruins, 50% off for $9.99. A great little Metroidvania with a good challenge and some fun weaponry that feels like a cross between Castlevania and an anime-focused waifu series, which may sound like the game can be goofy and horny, and yes, it is, but it also has some great boss fights, some smart puzzles, and a set of weaponry that is fun to use, and combat is great. And it has my favorite weapon of the last 10 years. Let the magical ham montage begin. Yes, that's what I said, magical ham montage. Yep. Take the ham! My ham is on fire. Do play relatively the same, but ham won't fail us. Ham failed us. My ham! No, ham, come back! Oh no, she can guard against the ham! Oh wait, I can actually oh, so I'm finally getting my comeuppance for taking the stuff in it? You have been bested by ham! The ham, the vanquisher of the holy light. We call that a honey glazed ham. I don't know what I mean. Let's finally end with Griftlands. 45% off for $10.99. I'm gonna warn people now. I don't get the connections that people keep on making to this game with Slay the Spire, other than the one run more mentality. Sure, it's a deck building roguelike game, but its focus on story and integration of both a combat and a negotiation section of gameplay does feel pretty unique in the genre. The presentation is flashy in all the right ways, especially in color and character design, and I do love the focus on factions and relationships that help benefit a run while still making sense in the story. It feels like the dev was attempting to give roguelikes more of a storytelling element, and they succeeded here. And it helps that the variety of strategies make me come back more for one more run. There's a lot of smart wrinkles in all sides of the gameplay to really reward paying attention, and now I'm concerned that I may buy it for the Switch because I really enjoyed it on Steam, or buy a Steam Deck. Anyway, this game's worth your time. Anyway, that's my suggestions for the Steam Summer Sale. Now, there is a lot of good games on there, so if you want to join the Discord, in the description below, I can give you my recommendation if I've played it or anything along that line, what I've heard about it, so on and so forth. Coming up next on the channel is a couple of things, actually. I do have a couple of things in the queue. First, I do have a review that is scheduled to go out next week, Vanilla Beast Retro Knockout, which is supposed to be a Punch-Out parody. That'll be a little bit interesting. And as I mentioned during the Rabi-Ribi part of this video, I do have a preview of a game coming out in Q3 of this year in Tevi. It is by the Rabi-Ribi developers, so they reached out to me and I was like, yeah, of course, I would like to preview the game. So expect that on the channel next week. As to what is beyond that, I still want to review Greed Inventory. I still want to review, not CrossCode. Well, I do want to review CrossCode, Raincode, and I have a lot on my plate. Anyway, that's it for now. And as always, keep on gaming.